nation reels from the mass shooting at Fort Hood Army Base in Texas. We're learning more about what happened leading up to the attack and new details on the suspected shooter. We have live team coverage for you tonight. Our Ken Pritchett talked with members of the military. He's live with their reaction. But let's start with Paul Verkaman live at Fort Hood with the latest there. Paul?
Well, we know much more about the weapon that the suspect allegedly used in the massacre. First off, it's a 5.7 semi-automatic handgun. It can fire a lot of rounds quickly. It's known on the streets of Mexico as a cop killer, and it's supposed to be a weapon of choice among the drug cartels. Again, this semi-automatic weapon front and center of the Fort Hood massacre. Mourning for the victims of Thursday's shooting spree at Fort Hood in Texas.
Their families, friends, and an entire nation grieving right now for the valiant men and women who came under attack yesterday.
And a yearning for answers.
We don't know exactly what his motivation was, whether other people might have been involved or in contact with him.
The alleged shooter, 39-year-old Army psychiatrist Nidal Malik Hassan, remains hospitalized and in custody. 34-year-old police officer Kimberly Munley, among the wounded, is being hailed as a hero for confronting the alleged gunman, shooting him 4 times, and ending the rampage.
What I was told was she was one of the first to arrive on scene and to take the suspect under fire.
Hassan was said to be struggling with the prospect of an upcoming deployment to Afghanistan. The FBI has searched one trash bin and removed another from his apartment complex. Neighbors say Hassan cleaned out his apartment the morning of the shooting and gave neighbors copies of the Quran.
He would say, I just want to thank you for being a good friend and being there for me.
For the families of the victims, many questions and little comfort.
Attacking another soldier, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Bay Area veterans are also stunned by what happened. They say they can't believe it and that it is especially hard because it was one of their own. KTVU's Ken Pritchett is live tonight with more on what they're saying. Ken?
Well, Frank, this afternoon, dozens of veterans gathered for the opening of a much-needed new VA outpatient center here in Santa Rosa. But for some veterans, it was a celebration tempered with a heavy heart over the tragedy in Texas. The flag was lowered to half-staff. There was a moment of silence before the opening ceremony.
We're all suffering, all veterans, the whole veteran community.
Bruce Thompson is an Army veteran twice wounded.
I was stationed in Fort Hood with the 1st Armored Division before I went to Vietnam, so it was one of the happy memories of my tour in the Army.
Thompson says it is difficult for him and his fellow veterans to talk about the 13 lives lost, the dozens wounded, and the disturbing images of Fort Hood, so unlike what they remember.
And now with this terrible thing that's happened, you know, it could never really be a happy memory again.
Well, it's numbing. You know, it's numbing, isn't it?
John Logan is also an Army veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, and has suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. The suspect, Major Nidal Malik Hassan, treated PTSD patients, which some say can itself be traumatic.
I can understand how he could go over the edge, but I can't understand why he would be so violent in it when it's the violence that he's opposed to, right? You know, it's just, that goes beyond my comprehension.
The veterans we talked to did not discuss the suspect in detail. The why did not seem as important as who might be responsible, a fellow soldier.
It saddens me that somebody from the military community was responsible for it.
Especially when it's one of your own. You know, it's so hard when it's one of your own.
Some of the veterans were also disturbed by the fact that the accused is not just a fellow soldier, but a high-ranking officer, a major, a superior officer. In Santa Rosa, Ken Pritchett, KTVU Channel 2 News.
President Obama today ordered that flags at federal buildings and installations be flown at half-staff in tribute to the victims at Fort Hood. One of the first flags lowered was at the U.S. Capitol. Federal buildings here in the Bay Area are doing the same. The flags will fly at half-staff until next Wednesday, Veterans Day. The White House says that President Obama plans to attend funeral services for those killed in yesterday's massacre at Fort Hood. But a spokesman says the scheduling will be up to the victims' families, not up to the president. In fact, the White House says Mr. Obama might delay his departure for Asia, planned for next Wednesday, if it conflicts with the scheduling of the